All right, guys, our next guest, he is the man behind the boxing of Nick and Nate Diaz and the man who has helped them reach the success that they have today. He is the legendary boxing coach himself. He is none other than Richard Perez. Richard, welcome to Submission Radio. How you going?
I'm doing fine. Thank you, Casper.
Oh, it's our pleasure to have you on the show today. It's great to chat to you. Before we talk about Nick's big fight, we want to know, how did it all start and, where did the Diaz brothers get their amazing boxing from? How did you guys originally get together and how old were Nick and Nate?
Nick and Nate, it was in 2004. The age I can't really remember, but that was in 2004 before Nick fought Robbie Lawler. That's when I started training in the boxing.
Wow. It's interesting, Richard, because Nick and Nate, they're obviously very tough and they work very hard to have the skills that they do. But, I heard a huge part of that is thanks to you. Before they met you, what were the guys like in the striking department and what was it like, kicking it off from scratch with them?
They were okay. I mean, they weren't really what you call good boxers. I mean, they would throw punches, believe me, but they, especially Nick, he would, get hit a lot. And Nathan was a little more movement, more of a bullet boxer, better. But Nick would just stand there and just bang with you.
And you famously said that in 2004, this is around the Robbie Lawler fight. You saw how great Nick could be. This is before he fought Robbie Lawler. When you look at him now, over 10 years later, do you think he's reached that potential and become as great as you had envisioned?
Yes. The thing about training people, like Nick and Nathan, anybody, is that they improve all the time when I train them. There's always something they get better at. And like Nick threw the most punches in the fight. But when he fought Robbie Lawler, he was a big underdog. And he came and asked me, will you train me for boxing? And I said, yeah. And we started training. And I was really surprised because the way he fought, that he listened to me very well. And he went out there and did what I told him to do. I mean, I wasn't there, but he didn't get careless. He boxed really good, and that's why he won the victory.
Nick sends a lot of mixed messages. He's recently said that he doesn't enjoy fighting. However, we read interviews with you where you've talked about how often Nick and Nate would call you up and get down to the gym and train. Do you think the guys are still as passionate about fighting as they were in the past? Do you think they're as passionate as they were, Richard?
Well, sure there is. I mean, he says he doesn't like fighting, but he must. I mean, because I loved it. I mean, it's just still in my blood, so it has to be in your blood. And I mean, he's never told me he didn't like it, that he didn't like fighting at all. So I believe he does.
And, Richard, I want to go back in time a little bit, before we talk about this big fight. You have been obviously with Nick and Nate for so many years. What is it that got you into boxing and what made you want to be a trainer in general?
Well, there's four brothers. There's four of us. And my dad taught us how to fight when we were little. That's one of the first sports. I mean, that's what I remember doing the first time, is just putting gloves on and boxing my brothers. I was the youngest. So obviously I was always getting beat up, but I learned. So when I go box other people, it was easier for me because I would box my brothers are older and stronger, and I learned a lot more. And when I go to box other people, it's like, wow, this is cool. And that's how I got started.
Absolutely. Richard, MMA boxing, approaching that from a traditional boxing world can be difficult for so many trainers. How different, because I know you train a lot of boxers and you also do train some MMA fighters such as Nick and Nate and Yancey. How different is the training that you do with the MMA fighters compared to your traditional boxers? What would be the key differences?
Make them throw elbows. That's the only difference. Yeah. Just throwing. I make them throw, like boxing, they're boxing, but I make them throw elbows too. Well, they want to throw the elbows, so we do that too. The majority is punches.
With boxing, obviously, all you really have to worry about is the strikes, whereas in MMA, you have to worry about being taken down and put in the clinch and, having someone throw knees at you in the clinch. So would that change the training in terms of what you guys do, or does it still stay the same for you?
I'm there when they're doing MMA too, but my main thing is boxing, so yeah, what I do is, when I'm in the ring and I'm working with them on the mitts, and I'm throwing punches at them, and I'm trying to throw like uppercuts, trying to explain to them like it's like a knee, but other than that, when they do kickboxing, I'm there trying to, guide them to the same thing as, watch the knee, watch the kicks, step in, just things like that. So it does help them out. as far as the boxing from when they're doing kickboxing. The takedowns, no, that's different. That's it's their way of fighting on the ground. I don't, I try to give them a little bit of coaching, but not too much.
Well, what I mean is though, like with obviously boxing, like you would train a certain way, to throw strikes without the worry of the takedown. I'm just saying, like when you teach the guys boxing, would you teach them to box a certain way, in a way to say avoid the takedown? Not to say that you teach them takedown defense, but just yeah.
I see. No, boxing is the same. I mean, I focus on just boxing, and that makes them better. Because if I try to work with other things, it throws them off. So, and anybody. So that's why once I get them, and they're in my territory, then they're focused on just boxing.
And obviously your territory is amazing. Now, last weekend, one of your star pupils, Nick Diaz, he put in a great performance against Anderson Silva. However, Nick mentioned due to a mix-up, you weren't in his corner. We're just wondering, what happened, Richard? Why weren't you there?
Well, what happened was, when he fought his last fight, not this one, Anderson Silva, but when he fought George St. Pierre, I didn't get my percentage on the pay. And I don't know what happened with the mix-up with the manager and Nick, and then so he let the other manager go, and he hired this other man named Lloyd as a new manager, and they met in my gym, and we negotiated, for the purse, and I asked for a contract, and they said it was fine. That was in October. So then I started training Nick, and I kept calling the Lloyd, and I wasn't getting no contract. So I just felt like, I think it was on the 12th of January, I decided, I'm not going to do this anymore because I don't want to get burned. So I texted Lloyd and told him that I'm not going to do this unless I get my contract like he promised me. And that's what happened. It was just, they didn't want to give me the contract. So I felt like, I didn't want to get burned again.
Wow.
I guess I did.
Wow. So that's a major.
It's sad because I brought him all the way up to the top. And this is what they talk about is striking. And he gets this guy's a legend, and he gets a big pay. And then I'm being pushed aside. So, that's what happened. So, I'm hurt about it, and it's sad because you have a relationship with a guy, teaching him how to do something that he doesn't know, and you bring him to the top, and he breaks the record throwing the most punches, and all of a sudden I'm out. So.
Yeah. So Richard, just to be clear, does this mean will you be working with Nick in the future? Has Nick spoken to you at all about rectifying the situation? Do you see yourself working with him in future fights?
I haven't heard from either one of them, the manager or Nick.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it's sad. It really is, because I've never had that problem before, never. And as far as anybody I know that trains boxers or any, never had that problem before. I mean, that I know of. I mean, there probably is, but it's not like this is. I mean, come on, this is. I don't know. It's upsetting, very upsetting. I was just saying, it's like bringing up I brought him up. I mean, it's like, and I did everything for him. I tried. I put everything I know in boxing into him, so he can learn it and do it right. And so he broke the record in throwing the most punches. And then he broke his own record of throwing the most punches. So that's what brought him up there. I mean, I know he's good jiu-jitsu. Nobody wants to go on the ground with him. So where's the left? Stand up.
Absolutely, Richard. And just wondering, you mentioned how he brought in his lawyers. What was your relationship like with Nick then? And, with these people in his ear, now that he started making, the huge money, do you think it kind of changed him a little bit? Was that one of the factors, do you think, that affected the whole situation?
I don't know. I really don't know what the problem is and what went through his mind or anything, but I text both of them and let them know that I'm no longer going to train. I'm sorry. And if I don't get my contract, and I sent it to Nick too, I said, Nick, the ball's in your court, so it's your decision. And I told Lloyd that too. And the hardest part of training pros is dealing with managers, And the fighters in there had a problem because they always talk to the manager and say, hey, pay Richard, So they always went through. But this one, it just didn't seem to work. So.
Wow, we're really sorry to hear that, Richard. I'm curious because you say you texted both of them. I'm assuming you're meaning Nick and Lloyd. Does this mean the same thing for Nate? Are you still training with Nate Diaz, or what's happening with that?
Okay, Nate is totally different. He's day and night. He's always got my back because he appreciates what I do for him. You know, he knows that I teach him really good in boxing. He knows I got him in that boxing position, you know, throwing good punches. Because he broke Nick's record in throwing those punches when he fought Cowboy. So, you know, but Nathan always takes care of me. He's never let me down. None of my fighters have ever let me down. This is the first time.
Wow. Richard, you know, that's a developing story there. And, you know, thank you for telling us that. You know, just wanted to get your thoughts on last weekend. Obviously, you had worked with Nick a little bit going into that one. You know, what were your thoughts on his performance against Anderson? Were you impressed at all?
Well, this is what I figured. You know, I almost had him where he wanted to be. We had like a week and a half to go left, and I was going to go full force with him. But where I stopped, I felt like he would do fine. I knew he wasn't going to throw a lot of punches. I knew that, but I figured he would catch Anderson Silva. But since Anderson Silva was on steroids, it's hard to knock people out when they're on steroids. You know, it's hard to really, you know, wear him down. But if I would have worked him a little bit more, that week and a half, I guarantee he would have stopped him.
Yeah,
if I would have been there coaching him, if I'd been there coaching him, it would have made a big difference too. But
before we talk about Anderson Silva's steroid test, you know, you mentioned you knew he wasn't going to throw a lot of punches. You know, I'm fascinated by that. Why was he not going to throw punches? It seems very unlike Diaz. What was the game plan behind that?
What's that?
You said that you knew Nick Diaz wasn't going to throw a lot of punches. Why was he not going to throw a lot of punches?
Oh, because I didn't quite have him there at that peak yet. I needed the rest of the week and a half to get there, and I knew I would have got it. I knew I would have had him there. Because the way I train, I'll go, you know, 5-6 rounds on the mitts with him, 5-minute rounds. And that's constantly, I mean, throwing combinations, me throwing at him back, you know, I got to be careful not to get hit. It's just, you know, I got him throwing like a machine, you know, and that's what stops people. If they he can't take the punches, they go to the ground, he taps them out. Yeah, so that's the whole key. I knew, and then me not being there, you know, trying to help him out on what to do, what to throw, what to set up, he was on his own.
One of the strange techniques that Nick implemented in this fight, and I'm wondering if you knew anything about this technique or could explain it to us, Richard, was he would take his elbow out and point it out, and I think it was in the first couple of rounds of the fight. Wasn't very sure exactly what he was doing. Do you have any kind of explanation about what that technique is? We've never actually seen that one before.
Doing what?
So he was taking his elbow and he was pointing it out. He was sort of in his boxing stance, and then he was just pointing his elbow out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about. He does that sometimes. I don't like him doing it, but he does it. He puts his elbow out there in front. I don't know why he does that, and I have no answer.
Okay, well, I guess we don't either. I'm not even sure if Nick does. You know, when this fight was announced, you know, Anderson had this big aura about him for so many years. You know, I'm just curious, when this fight was announced, what were your initial thoughts when you looked at both guys' styles? When
they first announced them fighting?
Yeah.
Oh, I knew Nick would have it in the bag because I was going to train him all the way through the fight, but it didn't happen. So. If you see now, and you notice that I didn't train him the full amount, and plus I wasn't there, he was kind of like lost, but yet he went to decision. And even Anderson Silva was on steroids. Nick, I tell you, they're totally different if I would have been trained all the way through. I don't care if Anderson Silva was on steroids, because the amount of punches that Nick would have been throwing on him, he wouldn't be able to handle it.
You know, one of the big things to come out was also, you know, Nick testing positive for marijuana. Having worked with the guy for, you know, over 10 years, you know, were you surprised at all by these findings? Do you think it's something that sort of got in his way when it came to his athletic career?
I didn't know. I really didn't think he was going to be for steroids. I mean, for marijuana. I didn't think he was going to do that, but I guess he did it. So. I mean, he does it. I guess he does it sometimes, and sometimes he doesn't. I don't know. I mean, I'm not with him 24/7, so even when I'm there at the fight, you know, we're there like 3-4 days before the fight. I'm not around him all the time, so I don't know when he did it. You know, so I can't answer that. So I mean, I just do what best I can do and remind him, you know, to not do it until after the fight. You want to do whatever you want after the fight, that's fine, but. I don't know if somebody convinces him or they pull it out or something and he's there. I don't know.
And, I mean, the biggest thing with that test is, I guess, marijuana, a lot of people have mixed opinions on it, but just the fact that it looks like Nick is going to have to miss a large amount of time from fighting, and he had to do that previously again because of the other test that he tested positive for. Do you think that's a shame that it's going to keep him out of fighting again for a while because of him testing positive? Possibly even worse than Anderson Silva with this whole steroid thing.
Well, it might. You never know. I mean, Anderson Silva, Nevada, they took the win away from Anderson Silva because of the steroids against Nick. So that's good for Nick. I mean, but the marijuana, I don't know what they're going to do. The marijuana it doesn't do good for you in the fight. It's not like steroids. It's not like it doesn't affect you, make you stronger or faster or anything. It just makes you like slow. I mean, I don't know. But I think he did it like maybe 8 days before, 9 days, 10 days or whatever, because it takes a while to clear. So I don't know. It could have been 3 days. I don't know. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a scientist, but I would assume there's a big difference between marijuana before a fight and steroids. What were your thoughts? Anderson Silva for a long time has been considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time, and then this steroid test pops up for not one but two types of there's traces of two steroid metabolites. What was your initial reaction? Were you surprised like everyone else?
I was surprised, but I started figuring out maybe it's because he broke the bone and they replaced it, and they wanted him to develop faster, heal faster. And I don't know if he ever did it before, but I figured maybe I give him the benefit of the doubt that maybe they used it because they wanted him to get going, and get heal faster, and get to work in fact, start training and get strong and get back to where he was. I guess I don't know. That's my guess.
Absolutely, Richard. With a guy like Anderson Silva, do you think a test like this sort of puts his legacy into question?
Oh, yeah, because if he didn't come in with steroids, even though Nick wasn't throwing a lot of punches, Nick would have stopped him. I know it would have been different.
And just in terms of
Steroids make a big difference. Steroids make a big difference.
And I'm just curious, just between watching Anderson Silva fight before and, years prior to watching him now after such a long layoff and obviously the horrific injury he suffered, what did you think of his performance in general? Do you think he looked like the old Anderson? Do you think, he still had it? No, he
slowed down a lot. In this fight, he slowed down a lot. And I don't know if it was the steroids, I don't, because, or just the long layoff, the leg. I don't know. There's three things that you can focus on those. And that's the long layoff, the leg, and the steroids.
Richard, you and Nick and Nate, and obviously you've been in the combat industry for so many years. Nick was in Pride, which is notorious for people juicing and using PEDs. When you've gotten one of you guys ready before, have you ever thought, man, this guy, he seems a bit sus? Because all these steroid tests, they're all coming positive now. But what fans are wondering is, has this always been going on in the industry, or is it something that just starting to happen now?
I think it has been happening a lot, because I've seen some guys that had muscles on their back that I've never seen before. Like don't get me wrong, but like George St. Pierre, he was bulky, and when we went to the weigh-in, Nick was trying to cut the weight to get to 170, and they came up to us and told not George St. Pierre, but the ones that are in charge of the weigh-in or the UFC said, George St. Pierre is 1.5 pounds over, and he's not going to lose the weight. And that made Nick mad. That's not right. So he came in over. So he wasn't going to try to cut down. That's wrong. But see, they don't tell it to the media. And Nick said, why can't he cut the weight? He goes, he's George St. Pierre. Well, come on. That, it makes me mad because they hide stuff sometimes for other fighters, but yet if Nick smokes weed or does something, they make a big deal out of it. I'm not trying to stick up for him, but I'm just saying, they should be all equal. It's a world title fight. George St. Pierre should have been on the money. He should have had to cut the weight, and he didn't. Here's Anderson Silva coming in with steroids, two different types, and okay, so they take the win away from him, but what else are they going to do? Is that it? And then Nick got busted for marijuana. What are they going to do to him? You know, who's going to be punished more? Because they would look at Nick as a bad guy as far as fighting. But I'm not trying to stick up for him. I just feel that everybody should be treated the same way.
Yeah, no, I understand completely where you're coming from. And I remember that video leaking of, I think someone was recording when the commission actually came up to you guys and talked about GSP not making weight. You know, with Nick, after his last fight, he retired, and I believe there was another semi-retirement prior to that, and now he says he might be retiring again. What are your thoughts? Do you think Nick will disappear? Do you think this is his last fight? Do you think we'll see him in boxing?
Well, he's got 2 more fights, so I'm pretty sure he'll do the 2 more fights. I don't think he's just going to stop right now. I think he's just disappointed because of overall everything,
Absolutely, Richard. Now, let's talk about your other star pupil, Nate Diaz. You mentioned that you have a completely different relationship with him. Nate made a return to the UFC. However, his performance, obviously, wasn't exactly what you guys wanted. How's training going with Nate now? And, what did you think about his return to the UFC? What did you think about his performance when he returned to the UFC?
Oh, Nate trains really hard. But, see, no one really knows. Like when he fought Benson Henderson, he hurt his back. He was cutting weight, and this manager wanted to go in there and spar with this 200-pound guy, and they fell down, and Nathan hurt his back, so he couldn't train for 9 days, and we only had like 14 days left before the fight, so he couldn't really do anything, and he didn't do much in the fight, but he made the distance. He went the distance. And then when he fought Ross Thompson, they were taking him away from me all the time, and then his weight he was overweight, he wasn't, I don't know what happened, but anyway, he tried to lose a bunch of weight before the fight, and it messed him up, so he wasn't right there either, and that hurt him, and so then, when he fought his last fight here, he hurt his ribs, like 2 weeks before the fight, and we really couldn't train that much, when you hurt your ribs, you can't throw punches, you can't do anything, you can't even breathe, So, he gained some weight, and he couldn't lose it, so he went to the fight. He wasn't going to back out. That's one thing about Nick and Nate. They will not back out, no matter what. And it hurts, and that's why he looked bad in those 3 fights. That when he's okay and nobody's bothering us, interrupting us, and we're training, he comes out like lightning. I mean, you can see it.
Yeah, well, one thing I'm curious about is because we've had Nate's manager on the show quite a few times, and we've been talking about the long layoff and things like that. Did you still train Nate in between his long layoff when he didn't fight for, I think it was almost a year, or it was at least quite a while? Did you still train Nate in the interim?
Yes. Oh, yes. We still hook up.
And I mean, the big question is, Richard, going into 2015, what are you expecting from Nate Diaz in that octagon? Obviously, you mentioned you guys are working very, very hard. Are you guys looking to make a big run at it in 2015?
Well, I hope so. I mean, that's, we always look at that. We're always looking at it that way. That's our goals,
Now,
to work hard and win.
Oh, absolutely. Now, something else that I wanted to talk to you about, we were looking through, I believe it was your Facebook, Richard Perez 209, and we saw some interesting photos. It was UFC Hall of Famer Ken Shamrock went down to your gym, Richard Perez Boxing, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Now, this is pretty cool. What was it like having Ken in the gym? What was he doing there, and did you guys do any training?
What's funny about that is that I wasn't there. Of all days, I had to go train Nick in Concord.
Yeah.
And he came in. He was asking for me, and I wasn't there. So, that's what I'm saying. I went to go train Nick. I was getting ready for this Anderson Silva fight, and I missed him. I wish I would have been there, but I guess it wasn't meant to be.
Now, Richard, one of the big things for yourself personally was that you did open a new school. I believe it was mid last year. Just wondering, for the fans listening around the world, can you tell us a little bit about the facility and, what was the inspiration behind opening it?
Well, my wife and I talked about it. We've always wanted to open up a boxing gym. And, what's funny is that we would drive by buildings, vacant buildings, and say, hey, that's going to be our gym. And we would laugh, because I never thought I was going to do it. I wanted to. That was my dream, but I never thought I did. Until I ran into this building over here in Manteca on Main Street, and that we decided to take a chance and open it up, and I didn't think I was going to get a lot of people. I've been open for 7 months, and I have over 140 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. We're super happy for your success, Richard. We're going to do something fun with you just to wrap up the interview. It's called the Submission Rated Tap Out Round. We just ask you a few fun questions and you answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready?
Sure.
Alrighty. Give us your favorite boxer of all time, Richard.
Shooter Savage.
Give us the official Richard Perez prediction. Pacquiao versus Mayweather, if it ever does happen, who wins it and how?
Pacquiao. I don't know if it's going to be a KO or a decision, but I go for Pacquiao. I believe he'll do it.
Pacquiao.
Yeah.
Interesting. Apart from Nick and Nate, who, in your opinion, is the best boxer in MMA right now?
Besides Nick and Nate?
Yeah. Or,
I don't know.
If we're including Nick and Nate, do you think it would be the Diaz brothers?
Yes. I believe it's the Diaz brothers. They can box.
Richard, I want you to finish this sentence for us. People don't know that
I'm a Christian. I follow God. That's why I'm here now. That's my number one goal. I mean, he's the one who brought me all the way to the top.
Now, Richard, we know you're amazing. You're an amazing striker, but have Nick or Nate or any of your other MMA guys lured you into doing a bit of BJJ before, and how did you do?
Yeah, I've wrestled my freshman year, but I didn't do any tournaments. I was too heavy, so I just worked with the guys, and I did really good. But jiu-jitsu, no, I've never done jiu-jitsu. I mean, Nathan always said, "Come on, Rich." No, that's okay.
Why is that? I'm curious.
I don't want to break any bones. I'm too old.
Richard, we're curious. What's the best boxing movie of all time?
What's that one with? It's an old movie. I can't remember the name of it right now. It's a black and white one. It's old. I can't remember what's it called now.
Is it the one with Robert De Niro?
Raging Bull?
Raging Bull?
Yes.
See, we have mind reading powers, Richard. Now, finally, you've done so much in your career. You've got a wonderful family and a fantastic gym. But speaking about your career in particular, what has been the proudest moment for you in your career thus far? What's a moment that you look back on so far? You've done so many amazing things, and you think that is my proudest achievement thus far.
Just given the opportunity to train people and teaching them and developing them and where they're at now, where they've been, like Rodney Jones, Tony Dominguez. There's other guys, that, like Rodney won the NABO, the INBF, not the NABF, and Nick winning the Strike Force, and Nathan winning the
The Ultimate Fighter.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and being where I'm at now, opening up a gym, and now I got kids coming up. They look good. They're doing very good. I mean, who knows? I'm having a champion here, So just keeping healthy, being physically healthy, mentally, that makes you feel good, really good.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, the next big thing may be fighting in, may very well be training in a gym. And guys, the opportunity is there. Check out richardperezboxing.com for more information on Richard's gym. And, of course, the address is 212, I believe, North Main Street, Manteca, California. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Richard. We're here in Australia, so I'm not that familiar with the addresses there. Don't forget to check out Richard on Facebook, Richard Perez 209, and, of course, Richard Perez Boxing on Facebook. Richard, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you, Casper. I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys giving me the time and the opportunity to talk to you.